Ni hao, annyeong. Hello, I am the Dark Fae, and welcome back to Confessions of a First-Time Dungeon Master. As always, if you missed the last session, I'll put a link to it up in the corner for you over here. You can check it out, catch up on what you missed, then come back here to find out what happened next. We are now on session 41, so let's begin. Okay, so now, with all of my players coming to out of these nightmare sequences, they find themselves kind of in a large, kind of very nicely furnished bedchamber, although it is like kind of sparse and looks like it hasn't been used in some time. Here's the map. It's a pretty basic map. No grid this time because not really much of a threat here. But essentially, they kind of start coming to in the order which they had their nightmares and kind of went into the doorway with. So Valkyrie wakes up first, and she has succeeded in all of her wisdom saving throws. So she has no madnesses to speak of. So basically, the 4 wisdom saving throws that they made throughout their dream, 2 of them correspond to the short-term madnesses, 2 of them potentially to long-term. So I did mess this up a tiny bit, kind of continuing on into the next room. But to start with, Umric, he's the next one to wake up, and his long-term madness is that he cannot hear. He is now deafened, so he's like trying to communicate. He can't hear anything. Valkyrie's just like, why are you being so loud? Stop it. And Umric can't hear. Tyrell wakes up next, and he wakes up, and then he kind of starts curling into a ball and starts kind of rocking back and forth, weeping and crying for a few minutes before gradually able to come out of the fetal position, and then kind of starts babbling for a little bit more as his short-term madnesses hit. Ivar is next, and he gets a short-term madness where he is paralyzed for about 10 minutes, so his eyes kind of wake up, but he's just staring up at the ceiling. And then Basil is last, and he doesn't wake up at all. So now those who are awake and functioning are trying to figure out what to do in order to help their friends wake up. Valkyrie cast Lesser Restoration on Umric at 3rd level, because none of them have any 2nd level spell slots left. Fun fact about madness, generally it's not listed in Lesser Restoration, so they're kind of unsure as to whether this is something that a Lesser Restoration can cure. Luckily it is, but the spell slots make it difficult. So Umric is cured of his madness and thus his deafness, and then they start trying to A, investigate the room, and B, get their friends up and running again. So Tyrell eventually comes out of his kind of babbling state and is kind of okay, although he is getting his long-term madness is hallucinations. So occasionally for flavor, I'll throw in like an illusion or a vision of something that's not there, just to kind of illustrate that he's tripping out. So he's seeing kind of visions and hallucinations. I should have done a better job with kind of putting in more flavor to other people's madness, because Basil and Ivar do have other long-term madnesses that are kind of manifesting, but I did a bad job of that. So I did, at the end of the session, kind of tweak it a little bit so it wouldn't be like I'd have to retcon like flavor text, and be like, oh, just by the way, this is something you have. And so it's really only going to come up in specific situations. Ivar eventually also breaks out of his paralysis, and he seems fine, just a bit paranoid. But Basil, however, is still unconscious. They kind of think maybe it'll wear off, maybe we'll kind of take a short rest to those who need it, because they are still kind of messed up from the Gibbering Mouther fight. And then while some people are taking a short rest, a few of them, I think mostly Valkyrie, are going around kind of and Umric are going around investigating the room. Valkyrie casts Detect Magic. Imric explores a little bit. They find out that the teapot is magical. The wardrobe is also magical. In the room, the wardrobe is also locked. And then there's also a little bedside table that is also locked. So eventually, Imric sends his librarian zombie, which I still cannot believe is a thing, to pick up the teapot and try to pour some tea, I guess. It is a magical teapot. I think I said evocation. That probably something elemental. They did kind of guess that probably like heats up or is a self-heating teapot. Basically, it's like whoever touches it will need to make a dex save or take some fire damage as it does heat up. But since it's the librarian and she doesn't really have free will, she goes, picks it up, and they can hear this kind of sizzling sound as her hands start to burn. She does take some fire damage, but I mean, as they pick it up, they can kind of hear a bit of a clink clink inside of the teapot, so they tell her to pour the tea, still burning her hands, and when they finish pouring the tea, out clinks a little key. This is not the key to the wardrobe, this is the key to the bedside table. So, going to unlock that, they find another larger key, which is presumably to the wardrobe. It is, as well as some kind of a journal. Valkyrie looks in the journal for any kind of clues as to like the room they're in, but she rolls like a 6 investigation. So basically, I just say that she kind of gleans a bit about like this seemed to like predate the tower existing. Probably somewhere like a mountainous village. Somebody went on some sort of a journey, had a revelation, and then came here. So behind the DN screen, this is actually the journal of the Master, Sinkane. This is his bedchamber, but he doesn't use it very often. And these are kind of his notes and journal entries to himself for when he first basically found Wistria and kind of became her disciple. So we'll see if they read that a little bit more clearly. They will get some more information kind of about what he is trying to do if they do so. But so after about an hour, taking a short rest for some, Basil is still not awake. So Valkyrie's kind of deciding whether to try another lesser restoration on him. Imric kind of talks her out of it and into going for a dispel magic because it's like, again, madness is not really like a very specific condition listed in lesser restoration, so he's thinking, oh, maybe it won't work. So she tries to spell magic work first. In my mind, madness is not really a magical effect. It might come about by magical means, but it is not like the effect of a spell or the effect of something, a potion or something that is to be dispelled. So kind of wastes that spell slot, unfortunately, but now they know maybe. After kind of an insight check, I tell them they kind of realize that this is probably something that affects the mind that has manifested in kind of different ways. So probably lesser restoration, which cured Imric, would probably cure Basil's affliction as well. So I think this is cast at the 4th level because no spell slots. So my players are really running on empty. With this, I didn't expect that to necessarily happen from this, like, room. But I thought maybe they'd expend a couple. They did, but pretty pricey. But Basil finally does wake up. He's a bit injured, so they take another short rest for him. So another hour kind of passes. There's not really a whole lot else in this room. It's kind of a rest room. The nightmare sequence was kind of the main part of it. It worked better than I expected. And so, actually, Valkyrie does go and try her key, her black key that has like the 4 notches and the purple notch lit up, that she got from the foyer. She does try it in the wardrobe, and it opens up back to the foyer, and they're like, oh wait, we're not ready yet. No, close that. So I don't think they're planning on going back to the foyer yet, if at all, but eventually now, with everyone rested, some people with their madnesses cured, some people not really knowing that they have a madness yet, they proceed on to the next room with the wardrobe key that they found on the bedside table. So now, this part I enjoyed, but also I think didn't go as smoothly as it could have, and that's really on me because I decided to design an escape room in like 3 hours before the session. So it was kind of my fault. I was forgetting a lot of details and like clues to give them because trying to juggle like what they were doing and what they were looking for, and me making so many interconnected objects just didn't go super smoothly. So that was my bad, but I think overall the room is pretty cool. Just I think I could have given better clues as to what was going on. And so I'm not really totally sure if how much my players like puzzles or are that into puzzles, cuz like definitely some of the party members seem to like sit out a lot more during puzzle sessions. Or like I think I can tell that people get kind of tired or I don't know, bored or like frustrated maybe, and so they just kind of are just thinking of what to do and it seems a bit arduous. So what happened was I guess I'll show you kind of the diagram that I made. I spent a lot of time detailing this puzzle, and when it just got bigger and bigger. So basically there are these 8 crystals in the floor with kind of these magical ley lines kind of connecting them, and each one of them has a different glyph. And they're all a color that kind of represents a school of magic. So I think it was white for divination, light blue for abjuration, red for evocation, yellow for conjuration, brown for transmutation, magenta for enchantment, purple for illusion, and green for necromancy. These are kind of based off of their symbols in like D&D Beyond. If you go to the spells, you can see each one of them has like a different symbol and color. So each one of these corresponds with the school of magic, but the crystals are tricking you in that the color that they are does not match the school of magic that they represent. So they kind of have to go through this escape room to find the true colors of these crystals, which is given by the glyphs. So I could show you the map, and there are a lot of different elements to this. So I'll start, I think, by memory in the top left corner. So in the top left corner, there are sets of bookshelves with a large kind of ornate standing mirror, a very big one, that can swivel. Next to it is a glass cabinet that has 3 different masks kind of displayed on busts or like mannequins that is padlocked. There is a hearth that is currently burning very brightly with like a candelabra of 7 candles on top of it. Above it, there is a grotesque kind of painting of like this horribly like disfigured humanoid. To the right of that is a grandfather clock that is missing its pendulum. On the very right of the room, there is a large desk that is kind of framed by these reflections of like stained glass windows, even though there's not really a light source, but somehow that's happening. Next to the desk, now on the bottom side, there is an orrery. I hate that word, which is basically like a metal representation of like a solar system that's kind of has all like these stars and planets that can kind of turn with 3 different kind of levels, each on an axis that rotates. Next to that is a suit of armor that is missing its helmet and is holding kind of a a golden circle kind of attached to like a long rod, kind of looks like a clock pendulum at its waist instead of a sword. Next to that is a locked chest, and next to that is a table that has several potions on it with a set of scales. So I'm not going to go through the solution to all of these puzzles because that would be ridiculous and take me hours. But basically, like, there are keys found in all different parts. They start off with some items like a quill and some matches for the candelabra. The quill goes into a little slot on the desk that opens a drawer that gives them the key that unlocks stuff. Looking in the mirror, there are like objects that you can only see in the mirror but not on the shelf when you turn around behind you. And so basically out of all of these like different things, a glyph appears, but in a different color than the crystal that it has been corresponding to. Kept fucking up as to what color was which, and I felt really bad that I could have made it a lot smoother and a lot clearer. But eventually, they got all of the different colored glyphs, and one of them, which is kind of these set of books on the bookshelf that, when put together, kind of create a title on the spine along with like the corresponding glyph. And it reads A Treatise of Transmutation and Its Magical Applications, with the corresponding glyph in brown. So it's kind of a hint that transmutation magic goes along with the brown glyph. Basil kind of does an Arcana check, since he's the only one proficient to kind of see, and I was like, well, you do know, growing up in a wizard tower, that there are 8 schools of magic. There are 8 crystals, and each school of magic kind of corresponds with a color. So they kind of have brown for transmutation. Given that he is a spellcaster, I kind of give him that illusion and enchantment, which are kind of the 2 schools that he works the most closely with, are purple and magenta. So it still takes them a while. They do cast some spells at the crystals, but I don't think they caught on at first that the color of the glyph is the one that they're supposed to follow, because otherwise, if all the different colors of the crystals just corresponded with the school of magic, it wouldn't really be a puzzle. So, like, they try evocation of the red crystal, they try transmutation of the brown crystal, and each time, basically, the magic is kind of absorbed. The crystal kind of starts to glow faintly, but then like an arcane burst of energy comes out from the crystal. I have them roll percentile dice, and a random magic effect from like the sorcerer's wild magic table happens. Luckily, they didn't get anything too terrible. Just some kind of illusory, gross ravens show up, and I think one of them got music kind of just swirling around him. So eventually, they kind of realize that they try for the school of magic corresponding to the color of the glyph, and that is what you're supposed to do. So they are able to guess and piece together which color goes with which, at which point, once all crystals start to glow. Actually, one thing I should have mentioned. So I did check beforehand as to what cantrips they had, because I wanted to make sure that they didn't have to waste like a million spells doing this. So they, across all of them, they actually do have almost all 8 schools of magic minus 1, which is abjuration. So in order to solve that, there was like an extra little puzzle that they didn't need to solve, where they would get some kind of extra treasure, some extra goodies, like a potion of greater healing, a scroll of life transference, we'll see if they use that, and also a crystal, identical in shape and size to the crystals on the floor, but it is multicolored. So like the 8 different colors are kind of constantly swirling in it. So this one's like a wild card. If they don't have the school, they can like replace one of the crystals basically with that, cast any spell at it, and it will activate. So I don't know why, but Valkyrie got very attached to this crystal and did not want to use it. She was like, I would rather spend a 4th level spell slot than give up this gem. And they were also debating on having Avar cast one of his first level slots because I don't think he had used any of his, but he also wasn't there at the time, so they would kind of have to have made that decision for him, which is a bit not cool when you have like a substitute solution there for you. So eventually, with much persuasion, they placed the multicolored gem into the white crystal, cast a spell at it, and it activates. So now all of the ley lines that are connecting these crystals start to glow, and it kind of starts to carve grooves into the floor as well, creating new lines as they travel towards the hearth. And the hearth kind of starts to rearrange itself, the stone kind of moving up the wall to create this very grand looking door, different than the ones that they've been through so far. That's like 15-20 feet tall, 15 feet across, kind of framed by these two marble pillars, very ornate, very grand. And this is the door to the throne room, which is the final room of this tower where they will finally meet Masterson Kane the Frightful. And I'm slightly terrified as to how this is going to go. They do still have the option to return to the foyer if they want to deal with the statues. At some point in this escape room, they did also find a series of notes and kind of sketchings that I mentioned were kind of seemed to depict some of the effigies, some of the statues that they saw in the foyer, so they have yet to go through those. But they're really tapped. And they're the thing that concerns me is they're really tapped after one encounter. Like, I guess for some of them it's also been like 2 encounters, because there was some of them took a long rest and then dealt with the librarian and the Mouthers, and then some of them dealt with the librarian first and then took a long rest and then dealt with the Mouthers. But our 2 main spellcasters, which are the cleric and druid, are really tapped, especially after dealing with the madnesses, some of which they still have. Basil, I think, is at like half health with no hit dice left. I hope they would know that this is a final boss. This is their contract. This is something they need to prepare for and be ready for. I don't know how this is gonna go, because this is a difficult fight, especially if they decide not to deal with the effigies. Although those could be also difficult fights on their own, so it's kind of a matter of balance of if they want to be able to control, I think, the combat a bit more with the statues, because then it's 5-on-1, or if they want to just take their chances and go in and fight the Oni, but in that case it will be, instead of 5-on-1 or 2 or 3, it's going to be probably like 5-on-5 in terms of like action economy at the very least, with lair actions as well, because there is sort of a magic ritual that is going on that they probably might want to stop. Maybe not during combat, but it will have effects. So I don't know. I'm always worried. I feel like that things are going to be TPK and then they're not. But I feel like somebody's going to die. Maybe not in the next session. We'll see what they decide to do. But if they might not even fight the Oni at all. The Oni's a talkative guy. He's got plans, and he's a persuasive dude. So it's possible, even though they have a contract, that they might not. We'll see. I don't know. I don't know what to do. We'll find out, though. But I'm really liking the character the more that I kind of prep him. But yeah, this is going to be one maybe crazy boss fight. Although I think with Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, which by the way is out now, which is awesome. Go check it out if you haven't. At, I don't know, D&D Beyond is a good place to see it. Not sponsored at all, but I wish. So I might give them some of their optional features, so maybe they can get a couple resources back, get a couple new things. We'll see how it goes, and you will see how it goes in the next one, maybe. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you were waiting eagerly to see if my players survive their final boss. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for notifications when I put out new videos. I love you all, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!